When we encounter Jesus Christ, who he is and what he has done, we can't help but fall down and worship him, just as the man who was born blind did. Encountering Jesus Christ is not about getting new religion, as the video clip had shown. It's not about religion at all. Meeting Jesus Christ is about receiving life, a full life, a real life. It's not about getting into a new religion, but about meeting a person, having a relationship with him. It's not about being religious, but about living out the gospel, the good news of God's love each and every day. Jesus and the disciples were walking along, and they came upon this man born blind. Everybody knew who he was. He probably sat at the same corner day after day, probably ever since he could beg. Then the disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or the parents, that he was born blind?" Rather than seeing a man who has needs, they turned it around and made it about a theological debate. And we do that. Who caused this to happen, we ask? This man or his parents? Who is to blame here? Why is there blindness in the world? Why is there poverty, illness, or violent behavior? Who is to blame? This man or his parents? And I love Jesus' response. He so often answers with a third option, which I call the gospel response. Jesus said, neither this man sinned nor his parents. This man is here before us blind so that the marvelous works of God could be shown. Is that an amazing way to interpret human need or suffering? When Jesus sees someone in need, he does not use that person's problem or suffering to develop a political or moral agenda. Jesus sees it as an opportunity, a chance to do God's work. God's work is revealed not in moral statements, but in an act of grace and in an act of mercy. You know, through the different players in this almost comical drama, we're going to see what it means to be a religious person and what it means to be a Christ follower. Is there a difference? If so, what's the difference? Last week, I had asked a multiple choice question, and I want to say thank you to those of you who came up to me and said, Linda, I picked the wrong answer. A few of you came and said you didn't understand and wanted to know more. And I hope the video clip, as well as this morning's message, will further clarify. What does it mean to be religious? What does it mean to be a Christian? There are many people in the church who do not know the difference between being religious and being a Christian. What is the difference between religious teaching and Christian teaching? Between religious work and Christian work? We see it in the opening, the very beginning opening of this story. As Jesus is walking along, he sees the man born blind from birth. The first difference between religion and Christianity is that Jesus sees the blind man. First and foremost, Christianity is about a God who comes to his people, a God who invites his people. The Bible tells us that he first loved us. Religion is the opposite. Religion is about man reaching up for God, but Christianity is about God reaching down for man. Remember the three parables of the lost in Luke's gospel: the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost sons. They were all about God seeking the lost. And so it is with this blind man. Jesus notices. Jesus approaches him. I wonder what must have been going through this poor man's mind when Jesus came up to him. He probably heard someone spitting and then felt some mud on his face. What's going on? He was only asking for some money, not for someone to put spit on his face and mud on his face. But the main character of this drama is not Jesus, but this man. Although Jesus caused the great sensation in town, he only makes his appearance at the very beginning and then at the very end. The irony of this blind man is that he has the leading role. He never asked for it. He never probably ever thought he would possibly be the talk of town, though he begged every day, though he tried every day to get people to notice him so they can give him a little bit of money. He never thought he would be the leading star in this drama, this amazing drama, and yet he is. You see, Christianity is not about what we do, but what God does through us. And so when the disciples asked Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, Neither this man or the parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. The disciples' question revealed to us a few things. It shows us, and Jesus' answer shows us the difference between religion and about Christianity. You see, from the disciples' question, we get the sense that they believe the man's blindness is someone's fault, either the parents or the man himself. They believe that the man's blindness was caused by sin. You suffer because you sin. And you know, friends, this kind of belief is ingrained in us. It's sort of the default mode that we seem to function in. It's the paradigm in which we live in. When something goes wrong, don't we often say, "What did I do to deserve this? I must have done something wrong. I'm being punished." Not only do we think like this of ourselves, but even of others. We think that if others are suffering, it's because they must have sinned. They must have done something wrong. We think they're being punished for their sin. A few years ago, my home church went through a terrible split. I guess any kind of church split is terrible, but about 2/3 of the people in the church left and created another church. My parents were part of that group that left, but I decided I would stay. We had a very large young people's group, and we as a group decided we weren't going to split. We would stay together. This meant that a significant part of us a group of us would have to go against our parents' decision. It was tough, but my parents and I agreed that I was able to make my own decision. They were upset that I wasn't following them, but they also agreed and respected my decision. Around the same time that the church split, my parents ran into financial problems. They were having difficulty keeping the books balanced in their business. We had trouble keeping up with the bills, the rents, the employee salary. During this time, even our phone was cut. And eventually, the people around the community, the Korean community, found out. Many of them supported my parents and encouraged them. But some people in the church began to make little comments here and there. And I was hurt by their comments. They were saying that my parents were having financial problems, difficulties, because they left the church. They were being punished by God for leaving the church. Friends, this is bad theology. It's not just bad theology, but it's sin. It's sinful to judge others. Suffering is not punishment for sin. Of course, we suffer the consequences of our sinful action. But when that happens, we know we're suffering the consequences. Just like when parents punish their children, they let them know why they're being punished. It wouldn't make sense to punish a child without letting them know why. Whenever God punished the Israelites in the Old Testament, God told them what he was doing. I said I was deeply hurt by these people's comments and what people were saying, but I shouldn't have been. But I was. And that's because I was wondering myself, maybe God is punishing us. Maybe we are having all these problems because God's punishing us for splitting the church. Bad theology. But this is what happens when we live in a paradigm of religion instead of gospel. Religion says if you live well, obey the commandments and the law, if you're a good person, then you'll be blessed and not suffer and spare tragedies. This is what we believe. And therefore, we believe the opposite as well. And that is, if you're suffering, if difficulties and tragedies are upon you, then you must have been a bad person or broken the laws and commandments. This isn't new. This is the same problem the Pharisees and the disciples were having. Jesus confronted their wrong thinking by saying, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. That's the difference between religion and Christianity. Our lives is to give glory to God, to trust him through suffering and trials, to persevere and to keep focus on Jesus. Remember, Jesus went through the most horrific suffering and trials and injustice. And not because there was any sin in him, but because he wanted to glorify God, to obey God, to love God, and to love us.